Hey everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk. My name is John, and today here on the channel we're going to be talking about Nightbreed and its brand new 4K Blu-ray that just came out from Scream Factory. So Nightbreed was originally released in 1990, it's written and directed by Clive Barker, and it's actually based on his own novel, Cabal, and this film tells the story of Aaron Boone, who lives in Alberta, Canada, and he himself is struggling with a little bit of a mental illness, and he is seeing a doctor, and that doctor is played by the legendary director David Cronenberg, of all people, who is very famously from Canada, which is why I guess they were able to get him for this film. And it definitely does fit in the David Cronenberg mold of body horror, but it definitely fits into the Clive Barker mold of monster movies. This actually was made right after he made Hellraiser 1 and Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, and it feels very similar to those two movies, and you could just see Clive Barker's love for practical effects and monsters and creature features. It's all in this film, but this film is also telling the story of this character, Aaron Boone, who gets framed by his doctor, played by David Cronenberg, for the murders of a bunch of people. He puts it all on him to cover up himself doing all of these killings, and David Cronenberg's character in this movie is a monster, man, and he plays it perfectly. I didn't really know that David Cronenberg could act. I mean, like, he's not doing the best job acting in this film, but he's actually doing a pretty good job. The way he delivers his lines are also calm, very much like a doctor. He's got those glasses on, that part in his hair. He looks like what a psychiatrist would look like, but this guy is just downright mean and horrible. To put all of this stuff on Aaron is just absolutely horrible, and Aaron only feels like there's only one way for him to escape, and that's to find Midian. He sees a patient in the hospital he's in who's telling him about Midian, and then he starts ripping his face off, and he still feels like that the only way for him to find any safety is to find Midian, which is a cemetery in the middle of Alberta somewhere, and luckily for him, he stumbles upon it. But while he's there, one of the creatures there turns him into one of the Nightbreed, which has to follow a certain set of rules, very similar to vampire rules, you know. Get away from the sun, don't get lit on fire, you know, don't get shot. Some of the basic stuff to make sure that you survive. And this film is actually an allegory for acceptance. You know, the monsters in this movie are actually the heroes, while the human beings, they're the real monsters. And that's what this movie is trying to show you. Also, you know, Clive Barker, he's an openly gay man. So it's definitely an allegory for being gay and how society treats the LGBTQ plus community. And, you know, how they still treat them to this very day. You know, where there's only safe places for them to feel welcome amongst each other. You know, they form a nice knit community, but you know, they're all monsters, they're all freaks, they all look strange, but they all accept each other. But how is the outside world going to accept them? Well, they don't accept them very well at all. And because David Cronenberg's character is just hell-bent on killing Aaron, he's gonna hunt him down no matter what. And the mask that Cronenberg wears in this movie is absolutely haunting. The only thing I knew about this film before I saw it was seeing images of him wearing that mask, and that mask is frightening. And I also feel like it had a huge influence on things like Coraline. It just reminded me so much of Coraline for some reason. And you know what's really funny is that Danny Elfman did the score of this movie, and Danny Elfman, especially back in the late 80s, early 90s when he was working with Tim Burton, it really creates that haunting fantasy score, and it just does so well really with this film. It really helps to move this film along perfectly. And this movie does feel very much like the first two Hellraiser films, which makes sense because he made this right after he made the first two Hellraiser films, almost back to back to back with the same crew and everything. So you could definitely feel that in here, especially with the practical effects. It definitely does look like the effects that are on Hellraiser. You could just tell that those practical effects are all in here. And I know I complain a lot about CGI, but it's because I love practical effects like this. Yes, these monsters do look like they're wearing effects on their face and everything like that. You can see the prosthetics, but I just think that works. I absolutely love that. I even love that when you get the guy who looks like Mac Tonight in this movie. He looks just like that with that crescent moon face. Like, some of these guys just look outright insane, but that's kind of the point of the movie, is to show you that yes, people can be strange and weird, but they're also just misunderstood people, and that's kind of what this movie is trying to show you. Then the real human actors, they're the real monsters. I mean, the sheriff in this movie is playing his character so over the top ridiculous. I mean, he's very accepting of what's going on, but he's like, you know what? I don't care that they're monsters and then that guy's dead. Let's just get out in those streets and let's kill these motherfuckers. And that's what he's out there to do. You know, he's chewing on a cigar as they're driving to the cemetery to kill him. Absolutely love this guy's performance. Nobody in this movie is going to win an acting award. You know, everybody in here is doing their best, but none of them are great actors. Even David Cronenberg, as much as I love him, he's not the greatest actor, but I do love the way he portrays his character in this movie. And it's always cool to see a director actually act, because it's like director's there to direct actors. You know, you want to see them act. Like Quentin Tarantino, it always blew my mind about how bad of an actor he is when he's there directing actors. But, you know, he's also a storyteller, so there's a lot more to it than that. I'm just making jokes here. But, you know, seeing David Cronenberg just be an actor in this movie is just absolutely fascinating. He's not involved in the creating process, although I'm sure that, he was giving Clive some tips and stuff like that, and apparently they had a pretty good friendship, so that makes a lot of sense. But I always find that to be so fascinating that he's in this movie. There are actually two cuts of this movie. There's an original theatrical cut and a director's cut. The theatrical cut, you could tell that they chopped up that director's cut because there are just some leaps in logic that you have to make, or it feels like there's pieces of the story missing, and they really do flesh that out a lot more in the director's cut. But the theatrical cut is still really good. You could definitely find the message in this movie. It's still very entertaining. Like I said, it does kind of feel like a B movie with a lot of the special effects, but the story is still coherent enough. It's still enjoyable enough. Is it one of the best movies ever made? Absolutely not. It's definitely fits right into that B-movie, horror movie mold where you're going to have a lot of fun watching it. You're going to love the special effects, especially if you're a horror fan. The special effects are absolutely awesome. The only Hellraiser movies that I actually enjoy are the first two Hellraiser movies, and this kind of fits right into that same exact mold, and I just absolutely love that. I'm going to be revisiting this movie every year going forward just because I had such a good time watching it. It moves along great. Even the theatrical cut moves along great. The director's cut, if you're a fan of this film, I definitely recommend checking out that director's cut because it does a great job of filling in some holes and really fleshing out the monsters a little bit more. And if you can believe it or not, at the time, this movie did win a Guinness Book Award for the most monsters appearing on film because there are a lot in here. And if you watch the creating of this movie, the amount of hours that these guys had to spend in chairs just getting all these prosthetics and makeup putting on and then having to act, they were having like 16 to 18 hour days just sleeping and then coming back and doing it all over again. I couldn't imagine doing that, but that's all for the art of film, and I just absolutely love that stuff. And I really did enjoy this movie. Is it a perfect film? Again, no, it's not, but if you're a horror fan, you owe it to yourself to check this one out. And now we're going to talk about the 4K Blu-ray that just came out from Scream Factory. But before we do that, if you are a fan of 4K Blu-ray reviews, movie reviews, lists, podcasts, and shorts, we try and do them all here on the channel, and nothing would help this channel out more than by just simply liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Well, here it is, Nightbreed on 4K. So Scream Factory actually released a 2014 Blu-ray, which had the original director's cut. That's when they were able to get everything together, some old lost footage, and release a director's cut. So that director's cut is actually packed in here as well. And man, this is a real definitive collector's edition from Scream Factory. I mean, they sprung for every bell and whistle you can imagine. It really does have everything. If you're a fan of this movie, and I know this movie has developed quite a cult following as the years have gone on, this movie was considered a critical and commercial failure at the time, but I think that a lot of that had to do with the misunderstanding of the meaning of this movie, and it can be a little incoherent in the theatrical cut, especially because there are some leaps in logic, some clear-cut plot holes, some missing parts that would have definitely done a lot better explaining what this movie is about. But luckily, you do get that director's cut in here. But before we dive into each disc, let's look at the packaging. First of all, this slipcover, I love this artwork. The colors, absolutely gorgeous. This artwork on the slipcover is beautiful. So, if you want to get a look at the back and everything like that, we're going to pop that slipcover off. And this artwork is reversible. I already reversed it, so the artwork that is reversible looks just like this. I decided to go with this artwork since, hey, you get the best of both worlds. You pop it open. Again, this is a 4-disc set. So the first disc is going to be a 4K disc. That's just going to have the film on 4K with your choice of DTS HD 5.1 audio or DTS HD 2.0 audio, and there's a commentary track. It's got to start in the 2.0 mono track, so make sure if you want to listen to the 5.1, you have to switch it. So don't forget to check your settings before you start. There's also English subtitles. And then the Blu-ray disc is going to be that new scan, which is a new scan from the recovered materials. And they make sure to point that out, that from what they're able to do and recover everything, they make sure to point that out on the back of the box. So just be aware of that just when we get into the visuals. So the Blu-ray is just going to have the compressed version of that new 4K. Same thing on the audio tracks, all exactly the same. Starts in the 2.0. Make sure you switch to that 5.1 if you want to listen to it in that. But you also get 3 interviews on the second Blu-ray disc, and that's the start of your extras. And then on the third disc is going to be your director's cut. Now, this isn't a new scan. This is the same scan from that 2014 Scream Factory release. So the only things that are new in this new 4K is the things that are on the first 2 discs. So that's going to be the new scan of the film. Everything else is exactly the same from a previous release. So if you you have that previous release, nothing else as far as extras here is new. But besides the director's cut being on the third disc, you also get an amazing making of documentary. I would have wished that they would have had some more interviews on there, but it's still great. You get Doug Bradley on there. Pretty much all of the cast except for David Cronenberg talking about the making of this movie. You also don't have Clive Barker on there, which would have definitely helped, but Clive Barker does introduce the director's cut, get his analysis of that and how, he felt like he was betrayed by the studio and the way they cut it up, which I just don't know how you can cut a movie without the director there. That's one thing that's always blown my mind. How do you edit a movie without the director whose vision of the film is there? You need him, I feel like, there with you. I get sending stuff to an editor to edit, but it should be always approved by the director. So it blows my mind that you can release a film without his approval. But, you get the director's cut, which is his approved version. And like I said, there's a bunch of extras on that third disc besides that great making of documentary. And then your fourth disc is just more extras, plenty more bonus features. I mean, they got everything. There are interviews for days. You could see all the screen tests, everything. You could see pretty much everyone's, just trying out. Like, they did all of the stuff, like, before they filmed it with all the prosthetics. They were doing a lot of rehearsals. You could see all of that on the bonus disc. I mean, my God, if you are a fan of this film, there are so many extras on there, and that's speaking right to me. You guys have probably seen me lower my score for many 4Ks if they don't include a lot of extras because, getting the film on 4K is one thing. You put the film in, you watch it, and that's always cool. If you want to do that, I totally support that. I know plenty of people who they don't give a shit about the extras, and that makes perfect sense. If you're not a fan of extras and you just want the film, as long as they adjust the price accordingly, I'm cool with that. But for a collector's edition, something that you market, something for the fans, a definitive edition, this is what they should be. They should always have these many extras. I mean, 4 discs. I mean, this really could sell for about $40 and be totally understandable just from the extras and the amount of discs in here alone in comparison to what other studios like Paramount will do, or what WB seems like they're starting to do with movies that just came out this week like Rio Bravo, where it just has the 4K disc and they won't even include a Blu-ray disc. And that is always unfortunate, and I will always take points off of the final score for that reason because I know you can do it. I know it's out there. Scream Factory has proved it here. Now, unfortunately, I do have to report to you that this isn't the greatest 4K scan visually that I have ever seen. First of all, the audio track is the same audio track that has been around for a while. Those 2 audio tracks are on the previous releases. Those audio tracks are the same ones that are on the director's cut, so no new audio here. So all we're going to be getting is a brand new 4K scan. And they make sure to put on the back of the box that it came from the surviving film elements. So apparently the film itself was in pretty damn rough shape, so that was probably what led to a lot of the issues, I guess, with the 4K itself. It is very grainy, both on the 4K and on the Blu-ray. There are a lot of pops on the screen. It's not very steady. The 4K is a little bit steadier than the Blu-ray. It does have Dolby Vision and HDR10, and you can see a little bit of a difference and improvements from that 4K and the Blu-ray, but not enough. And I also don't think this is a 4K that's going to blow you away or knock your socks off. If you're going into this thinking you're going to see something like a huge improvement over previous editions, this is not that 4K. I really think what sells this 4K is just all the added bonus features, because I don't think visually is the most stunning 4K I've ever seen. I would actually say this is a very middle of the pack 4K, very scene to scene. There's certain scenes that are on the Blu-ray and on the 4K where you could just, I guess it was just a matte painting and they didn't even bother to adjust the lighting or anything, and it looks like it was ripped straight from a VHS. I mean, like, it took me by surprise, and it's a very quick shot, maybe 2 to 3 seconds, but it looked just bad. And there's a lot of that in this 4K, and again, it's just because of the source material, and the fact that they made note of that on the disc itself is very important so that people are aware of what they're getting. Because if you're going into this and you're thinking you're going to get a 10 out of 10 4K experience, that is not what you're going to be getting for this film. But I do think that it definitely leans into that late 80s, early 90s tone. It actually, the visuals really reminded me of the Arrow Video Blu-ray releases of the first 2 Hellraiser films. So that's not a bad thing. I do think that those scans are pretty good, but you know, when you're bringing them to 4K, I feel like what most people anticipate is to change around how you felt about the movie, add some new life to it. I don't think that this is that 4K experience. Now, given I don't remember what this movie looked like on VHS or DVD because I didn't see it, so I don't know how much it improves on that or how much it improves on the 2014 Blu-ray that came out, but from what I'm looking at here, it's not a 4K that's going to blow you away. So people and fans of the film might be a little disappointed by that, but it's still the definitive edition. They still did a kick-ass job of making sure that this 4K looked as good as it possibly could look. And like I said, I find this film to be extremely entertaining. I love the message in the movie. I'm definitely going to be revisiting this movie often. I definitely think it's one that you guys should check out if you haven't seen it. And if you have seen it, I can recommend this 4K Blu-ray just because they really leaned into the fact that this is a collector's edition and it's here for the fans of this film. And I know people myself who are big fans of this film who have been looking forward to this 4K. So if you are one of those people, I can promise you that you will be pretty happy with your purchase. But if you're not a fan of this movie and you're just interested in it, definitely wait till the Shocktober sale from Scream Factory and get it there, because it's definitely one that you're going to want to have in your collection. So how would I rate this on a score of 1 to 10? I would give this 4K Blu-ray a really solid 8.5 out of 10. Very happy with my purchase of this. The only thing that's a little bit disappointing, like I said, is the fact that we don't get a huge visual upgrade like most people are probably going to be anticipating, but it's more than made up for with the great packaging, the great extras, just your choice of which edition of the film you want to watch. It's all included here. Nothing was held back, and I do think this is one that you guys are going to really enjoy. But anyway, if you enjoyed this 4K Blu-ray review and film review, please make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel, because that's the best way to help us out. And after you're done doing all of that, maybe go to your local cemetery or just get out in those streets and tell all your friends about us. We'll be seeing you around.